Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have Celeste Brooks joining me to discuss the Astrology of August 2023. Thanks for joining me. Do you want to introduce yourself and kind of give us some information about what you do, where to find you, or any projects you currently have working on?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm Celeste Brooks of Astrology by Celeste. I'm Astrology by Celeste everywhere. My main platform is Instagram, but also I have a YouTube channel, and I'm on TikTok and Facebook. And I'm an astrologer, a coach, and intuitive. My background is I have over 25 years of sales, marketing, and business development experience in Fortune 500 companies. So I made a radical change a couple of years ago to become a full-time astrologer. And so I offer readings, personal readings, as well as horary, and I do rectification. So if you don't know your birth time, I can help you with that. I do coaching with my background, and I offer classes. I'm a Taurus sun, Aries moon, Cancer rising. So the moon is my jam, and I have a moon mastery program, and I do monthly moon workshops. So you can check it all out at astrologybyceleste.com. Also, my podcast is called Celestial Insights to help you navigate the energies of the week like a boss.
I love it. I've found that so much with people that switch to astrology as a profession, is the majority of them kind of do a completely 180 from what they have had going for them. And now they're like, yeah, I'm an astrologer. I used to be like a CEO for a company, or I owned my own business or something like that. So I love that. I think that that's a great quality to have as an astrologer, is to kind of have experience elsewhere, so that like you have real life experience rather than just being like in your hobbit hole of astrology all the time.
Yeah, I think it gives me a unique perspective in some ways, yes, with bringing in the business with the astrology and
Mhm.
yeah,
And
perspective.
that's great too. You do rectifications as well, because not everyone can do that. So if you guys don't know, rectifications are if you're unsure of your birth time, or if you don't have a recorded birth time. The meetings with the astrologers, you kind of dive in and unpack life events to kind of figure out what's the most accurate birth time for you, so that you can see your natal chart. So if you need a birth time, head over to see Celeste.
Yeah,
So
you can just email me and we can discuss.
yeah, and I'll have all our links in the show notes if you need them. So let's jump into August. August itself, so we have, once again, it's we're moving into Leo, or we're in Leo season. And so anything in that Taurus placement is going to kind of start getting highlighted again. So Jupiter and Uranus as well. We have 3 lunations this month with in August, and I believe that last year we also had 3 lunations as well too in August. So it's kind of like a repeat of that time period. So don't get freaked out if you hear, oh my God, 3 lunations, like what's going on? Is the world ending? Because it happens. It happens. So starting off August 1st, we have a full moon in Aquarius, and it is square Jupiter and Taurus. So once again, like I was saying, that Taurus area of your chart is going to get highlighted. This full moon itself kind of reminds me of that action that we had, that T-square action that we had with with Pluto and Jupiter and Mars in, I believe it was in May. I might be wrong on that, but anyways, that action that we had where there was Leo, Aquarius, and Taurus all kind of being highlighted in this time period. So what's your thoughts and feelings on a full moon in Aquarius square Jupiter?
Well, the thing that really jumps out at me about this lunation, and I'm very interested in mundane astrology, the astrology of worldly events, is that also Mercury is opposite Saturn, and Mercury's in domicile in Virgo, and Saturn's weak in Pisces. So weak maybe is the wrong word, but it's not as strong. And the UPS, the United Parcel Service, this is the day they said that they're going to go on strike if they don't have negotiated a settlement with their leadership, and it would be the most expensive strike ever in US history. So I'm seeing this Sun square Jupiter. Is this going to be putting pressure, and the Moon square Jupiter, on the wealth of the United States because of this potential strike? So I think that might be a big story. Also, Venus is squaring Uranus. It's moving back to do the second of 3 squares. Venus also has associations with money and resources. It's retrograde. Retrograde planets can, delay things, cause problems, and destroy anything that was contemplated from happening. So yeah, that's what jumps out at me about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like talking about postage, like I think of like the mail exchange system as a very mercurial thing. Mercury being exalted and in domicile in Virgo. And we also have to remember that we will be coming into a Mercury retrograde in Virgo. So there's that energy playing out of maybe having to come back to the same subject. You know, and also too, like you were saying, it's like Venus moving retrograde. It's like, okay, what are the things that we want and desire, especially in Leo, luxurious items, are we able to get our things on our face cream on time, or our clothes for our summer vacation on time, things like that. And with that full moon energy in the Aquarius Leo axis, I think of like the collective versus not necessarily the company, but like the organization or the group you're part of. And that's the postal service is a union, and that's a very like Aquarius thing, is unions. So yeah,
Versus the leadership, the haughty like leadership versus, the people banding together. With the South Node in Libra, like going along to get along is breaking down, and people are North Node in Aries taking stands for themselves. Yeah, same thing with like the Screen Actors Guild strike. It's like it's the summer strikes is I think what we're going to be seeing, and I see that as part of the Venus retrograde story. Venus retrograde in Leo. You're trying to have a wedding or a big party or some kind of event, and nothing gets there on time, and it just causes all kinds of unexpected problems. Yeah, because if you're not paying attention to the astrology, you had no idea maybe we're coming.
Yeah, exactly. And I think of that, having that that Mercury opposed Saturn on the same day is like coming to some sort of agreement, or rewriting like maybe a contract or something like that, or what you're committed to, redefining, okay, what am I obligated to do? What are you obligated to do? Things like that, having that fair exchange. Saturn and Mercury themselves aren't necessarily like, it doesn't represent easy conversations. It represents something that's going to require compromise, or going to require like a lot of hard work and commitment. So it's very interesting. On a generic personal level, it's like, a full moon in Aquarius is like about showing like your authenticity, or it's like your unique genius about the things that really like spark your curiosity and interest, and just showing the world who you are in a sense. But I think that can kind of relate back to that postal service strike. It's like, I'm a human being. I deserve my rights. I deserve to be treated fairly and things like that.
Yeah. And also, like, I think that's come up in the last couple of years with these Aquarius full moons or Leo full moons is like, what are my obligations to society, as in terms of like when the mask issue was a big deal, this was the what do you call it, the vaccines were a big deal.
Yeah.
It was like about people saying my personal autonomy is either more or less important than what the group needs. And there's things popping up around that health issues as well, like malaria, which is not communicable, but yeah, there's a bunch of things cropping up that are health related that could be coming to a head,
Yeah.
where people may be asked to do something in order to protect others. So that could be also things that come up in your own life in
Hmm.
a different way, or with your family or something like that.
Yeah, because also too, if you look at in traditional sense, the moon itself represents the body because the body is impermanent. So it's maybe stating what you need to like have a functioning body, or stating your um not necessarily medical beliefs, but like how you feel will bring you the most health, and vitality with that sun moon opposition.
Mhm.
All right, so that's the full moon, August 1st. Moving on, we have on August 3rd, around that time period, give or take, we have Venus starts to disappear from the sky until around August 23rd. So this is her journey back towards the sun, towards the conjunction. And this is the part of the Venus cycle where she quote unquote enters the chamber of the gods in order to be initiated and reborn into a morning star. So as we're heading into August 3rd, Venus is still an evening star, which means if you go and look out on the western horizon, you can see Venus at night, or just before the right after the sun sets. And now it's like Venus is disappearing. So this is what I kind of feel is like um not necessarily a more chaotic, but like a more heightened version of the retrograde, because now Venus is gone from the sky and we can't physically or tangibly see her. So you might notice that the Venus retrograde themes really start to pick up around this time. Um, Pay attention to around this time and then what happens around August 23rd, because realistically that's when things are going to start manifest in a physical realm. Because Venus reemerges and becomes present in the night sky. So it's always a really interesting part of Venus's journey, um, when she's this quote unquote 40 days and 40 nights disappearance, where she reemerges, she disappears and then reemerges. I love it. Um,
Mhm.
so that's my little spiel on planets disappearing. So our next transit, we have August 9th. We have Mercury in Virgo trine Jupiter in Taurus. Um, I wanted to bring this one up because since Mercury is going to be going retrograde, this is the first out of three that Mercury and Jupiter will be connecting. Um, so what are your feelings on Mercury and Jupiter, in a trine, which is technically supportive?
Yeah, I think you have the ability to like this is a great time, I think, for planning how you want to move forward, because with Mercury in Virgo strong, you can have a plan that considers all of the details, but be thinking about how it's going to grow things with Jupiter. So I like this trine. I mean, the strike is supposed to be 10 days, so it's in line with like coming to getting things moving again at this time. So yeah, I like Mercury and Jupiter being in trine.
And also too,
The
like,
earth signs, you like
yeah,
really manifesting energy.
yeah. So like also too, if you look at the chart, I didn't like mention this, but Mercury's moving to join Mars. So there's that sense of like really getting things done. Or maybe like asking for help. I think of Jupiter as benefactors, so it's possibly asking for help when you need it. Um, going back to that full moon in Aquarius, because we had Mercury and Saturn in the mix as well too. Maybe some helpful knowledge from that time period starts to manifest, where like the first piece of the puzzle is coming together, and then as we move on through this Mercury cycle, when Mercury meets Jupiter again, another piece comes and another piece comes. So it's like, um, you know, picking out that helpful information or knowledge, or like asking people for the help and like discovering something that's helpful. Um, I think of uh like helpful tips and tricks to like be a successful human. It's like something you hear from your grandmother. It's like, put your hard-boiled eggs in an ice bath to peel them easier or something like that. Something as simple as that.
No, I like that. Yeah. And it's the day after a third quarter moon. So the third quarter moon where the sun is in Leo and the moon is in Taurus, both at 15 degrees. So the moon is conjunct Jupiter. So I think it's going to be a very interesting week. Are people going to be, yeah, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting week because they're both on world points. So there's going to be big news about resources or something about yeah, we're seeing a big thing about the earth in terms of these
Mhm.
extreme heat and things like that. So I wonder what is going to be the news that's going to be coming up around this time. We're in the heat of the middle of Leo season, the sun at 15 degrees of Leo. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Like it seems like around the 9th there's some sort of development in a
Mhm.
collective story, even on, so like you were mentioning that first quarter moon is the day before, which is like the first step in the lunar cycle,
The
or
last
the
quarter moon.
last
I'm sorry.
quarter moon, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The last quarter moon. So it's like the next step in the lunar cycle before we start the cycle over again. And also too, on this day, on the 9th, when Mercury and Jupiter are exact, we have the moon in the other Mercury ruled sign. So that adds like a level of like, I feel like getting some sort of information that's going to be helpful for you.
Mhm.
On August 9th as well too, we have the second Venus square Uranus. The first one was July 2nd time period. Last month I mentioned, Venus Uranus square reminds me of like the 2010s or like the early 2000s, like manic pixie style, where it's like this quirky main character that you love, but like something's weird about her. She has a eclectic style to her. That's just like a broad archetypal sense that I think of when I hear Venus square Jupiter or square Uranus.
Mm, yeah. And, part of the Venus retrograde on the day or the day before Venus went retrograde, the Barbie movie comes out. So I wonder if we're going to be seeing like how that's going to play out in the collective, if it's really a successful film.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like you said, the style and the fashion is probably really going to be something coming up maybe around this time with the South Node in Libra. That is going to be, yeah, something different or unusual or cutting edge.
Yeah,
That,
I could
yeah.
see almost people like trying to mimic that Barbie style because it's
Yes.
all over the place now.
Yeah.
Where like pink is like a huge thing, like pink's in style. Um,
Mhm.
as far as that. It could also be like on a personal level, it could be breakthroughs in relationships or breakthroughs in not necessarily romantic relationships, but platonic as well, or breakthroughs in what you love and desire and what just kind of makes you feel good. Um, I think of like a change or a shift when it comes to what you love, what you want in this sense, or like realizing that like perfect is not obtainable and we kind of have to come to some sort of um it's kind of relating to that Barbie thing. It's the ideal image of what a woman should look like, and now I could see people being like, this is completely unrealistic, and like all women are look differently or act differently, and we're kind of, I could see like a rise to like a small feminine movement around this time period, possibly around like the Barbie thing. I mean, I'm already getting sick of the Barbie thing and it hasn't even come out.
I know. Yeah, I wonder what it's going to be like because it's Greta, I forget, Gershwin or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think she's trying to like do something slightly feminist with the movie. So we'll see.
yeah,
We'll
exactly.
see. I mean, I might not see, but
Yeah.
we'll see what the collective has to say about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating too, because if we think of like this summer all in general, we have like Jupiter in a Venus ruled sign. We have the nodes just shifting the south node into a Venus ruled sign. So there is that sense of like the ideal image of beauty, or what is like aesthetically pleasing this summer. And of course we have iconic Barbie coming out around this time period. So it's
Yes.
very literal, you know?
I love how literal astrology is.
It is, it's great. So like speaking on Venus still, on August 13th, around that time period, we have Venus cazimi the sun, which means Venus has her exact conjunction with the sun. This is the halfway point of the Venus retrograde cycle. So it's like, okay, she's come back to the sun, she's met up with it. She's gonna get ready to move on and kind of reemerge into some sort of new Venus. It's not necessarily a completion of her full cycle, but it's a completion. Another stepping point or stepping stone in the retrograde phase.
Yeah, this could be a great time to like let go of it. Like when a planet goes cazimi, it like burns off old stories. It goes through a purification process when it goes through the sun, and Venus is retrograde. So it'll be interesting to see how, yeah, it like internally, it's a great day to like do something ceremonial where you let go of maybe old hurts or old stories that you're ready, or inhibitions about yourself, or if you let lack of confidence stop you from pursuing what you want to do to move forward, this can be a good time to try to like let go of some of that.
Oh, I love that. You know, and thinking about it too, it's like we have the sun in its home sign. So it's like the King of Kings is initiating and cleansing Venus. So it might even feel a lot more potent or powerful than like if, you know, the sun was somewhere else and Venus was somewhere else as well too. It's a very like what is my legacy? What am I going to leave behind? How do I want to be remembered? You know, who am I and how do I express myself in like a, just like, how do I express my aesthetic and how does that come off as like my personal experience through life? But I love that, you know, that cleansing, like, you know, the ritual of burning some sort of intention to let it go into the universe. That's the analogy of a Venus cazimi. It's like burning something to let it go into the universe and to make space for something new.
Yes, I love it.
So let's go back, or excuse me, let's go back. Let's go forward. My computer's not letting
And
me again.
Venus, when she becomes a morning star, she's like more aggressive and
Mm.
yeah, like ready to take charge.
Especially in the sign of Leo, it's like
Mhm.
it's the mother lion. It's, you know, she's kind of, I see it as like the queen of the roost in like chicken language, you know. Or I
Yeah.
guess in like uh in the hierarchy of horses, it's the eldest. I was told this. I'm just starting to get into horses, so correct me if I'm wrong. But the
I'm
eldest,
not gonna be able to correct you.
anyone listening, correct me if I'm wrong. But the eldest female horse, the mare, she rules the group of horses, and kind of like the younger male horse, kind of like they get told when to eat, what to do, type of thing, and along with the younger horses as well, the younger female horses as well. So that's what I think of as like Venus emerging as a morning star in Leo. It's like I am queen, you know, like finding your own personal queen within yourself.
Yeah, and so could I tell a story as well
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
sparked? So the lioness imagery in Berlin 2 days before Venus went retrograde, a was seen walking through the streets. They don't know where it's come from. And it's, yeah, they're telling people to stay in their homes, but the lioness is so Venus and Leo, and like ready to go retrograde. So we'll see when they find the lioness.
Oh, I love that. That's like that's a great literal symbol of like, Venus in Leo, especially going retrograde. So there just adds this level of like prominence or like things happening around it. That's a great story. Yeah. I wonder if anything will come out of it later on.
Yeah, yeah. They think it's a pet because no zoo or circus is missing a lioness.
Someone's random pet is wandering the streets.
Yeah.
So August 16th, our next transit, we have the new moon in Leo, conjunct Venus retrograde loosely. It's within 5 degrees, and I use like a 5 degree orb because I feel like you'll feel it. So it's new moon in Leo, conjunct Venus retrograde, and square Uranus and Taurus. So there's a lot going on. The Leo house is like super highlighted, I feel like, for this new moon. So I am a Leo rising, so I'd be interested to see what happens for me around this time period. Um,
What degree is your rising?
my rising's 9, so
Okay.
it's loosely off, but it's close to my south node. My south node's at 26 Leo.
I'm looking at that full moon for you.
I know. Well, my moon sign is in Aquarius at 6 degrees. So the full moon in Aquarius is very close to my natal moon. So Leo season, it is always a big time for me because I have Leo rising, Aquarius moon.
Mm.
But a side note, new moon in Leo. So once again, this is kind of continuing that journey that we have started the beginning of August during the full moon. It's kind of like backwards, it seems like, because we're starting the month with a full moon, and then the middle of the month we get a new moon, shortly after Venus's conjunction with the sun. So once again, those themes of like Venusian retrograde things. What do I love? What do I desire? How do I interact with people? How do I show my authenticity in life? It could also be like finances or luxury items, kind of developing a relationship with that, something along those sense. So what do you think about on a mundane sense when you see this new moon?
Yeah, there's going to be something that's shocking that comes to our attention, or something chaotic is going to be happening in the collective. Hopefully not an earthquake. I live in California. So
Yeah.
that's why I always think when I see Uranus being highlighted in such a tight, hard aspect with a lunation. Also, yeah, great time to think about what you're being awakened to and what you want to like break free from or liberate yourself from. I think could be something we can really be thinking about with this. But it's going to be something's like going to be going down somewhere in the world. That's, yeah, I think it's going to be like people rising up against authority or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it seems hot. Like, I see I see these 3 planets in Leo for a new moon. It feels hot connecting to Uranus, which adds that level of like instability, or like I think of overheating and then getting like mental overwhelm, or that deep feeling of discomfort. Thinking of Uranus being in a Taurus ruled sign of, or excuse me, a Venus ruled sign of Taurus. I think of like people getting very agitated or uncomfortable because of like just getting aggressive or angry or something along those lines, and or being fed up, maybe like being fed up with like having to rely so much on other people for their own needs, and wanting to live a more sovereign life or claim their sovereignty back. That's a very Leo thing. It's like who I am and what I want type of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing I'm really looking at through this whole summer is literally the heat.
mm,
Like we've had the hottest day on Earth on record, and I was reading a story about was somewhere in the Middle East that was on the edge of human survival.
oh my
So
God.
what is this going to be? Is it going to be a power outage somewhere? That's
Yeah.
from the heat. It jumps out. Texas jumps out to me in my mind
Yeah.
because they're on their own grid.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, yeah. So we'll see.
That's interesting. So I've had like up here in Maine and especially the East Coast, we've had record rainfall. Just a couple weeks ago, Vermont got like completely flooded, parts of Vermont and New York. We had some flooding back in like May, I want to say, around that time period, but it's been raining. Like it's just hasn't stopped raining. Luckily we've had some stretch of days, but it's so wet up here. I'm calling it the year of the slug in the East Coast because my garden is just getting destroyed by slugs. But um, getting back to that, like that drastic or that unpredictable weather, that's a very Uranian thing in the sign of Taurus. So um, pay attention to heat stroke around this time period. Give yourself water breaks and breaks in the shade and stuff like that. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about power outages or like the grid just not being able to support itself. I worry about just the amount of people that rely on electricity, period, ACs and central vacs and electric cars and internet and computer and all those little things that are running kind of bring it up in a sense. So that's an interesting point. Yeah, I could see Texas like like you were saying, because they're on their own power grid, having issues with that. um but yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it is so interesting. Like some places are deluged with water, and others are like broiling. It just the extremes are yeah
Hmm.
are really noticeable this time of year, which is well with Venus retrograde, Venus ruling just comfort
Yeah.
and pleasure. If you're like broiling or sitting in a garden full of slugs, it like
Yeah.
takes away from just the simple pleasures and enjoyments of life. So I
Yeah, exactly.
think that's a big story throughout the summer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been feeling that heavy Saturnian feeling of wading through water, and you can also think of that too, is if you get too hot, it's like trying to walk through sludge or run through water. You can't move as fast. So, um, that's something to be like incredibly mindful of, whether it's like it's raining in your area and you just can't go anywhere or do anything, or if it's too hot, then like you can't go anywhere or do anything. So let's go to our next transit. We have August 19th. We have around this time period, because it's a rough degree. Mercury reaches its maximum elongation from the sun, which means it's its furthest distance from the sun that Mercury can get, because Mercury can only be so far from the sun at any point. And this is when Mercury really starts to slow down in the sky or appear to slow down to get ready to station retrograde. So this is the unofficial kickoff of Mercury retrograde, as I like to call it. I believe we've already made it past the shadow period. I don't really pay attention to the shadow periods. Do you know when the Mercury retrograde shadow is?
No, I don't know what date it starts.
I
I
don't
haven't
either.
looked at that.
No,
Yeah.
I always pay attention to like where a planet is in accordance to the sun to understand when it's going to retrograde. So like I know that the shadow thing is kind of a thing, but yeah,
It's
we don't.
totally a thing. Like
Yeah.
I do start paying attention because you see the stories coming to light. And
Hmm.
this one is really important because we have this double retrograde where there's a period where Mercury and Venus are both retrograde. Um, yeah, so it's important to be really mindful of this. Go out and buy a new car.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I'm
no,
just kidding.
it is very important to pay attention to when the inner planets are retrograde together, because the outer planets are retrograde so often that like they're gonna be retrograde with other planets as well too. But when two inner planets like Mars, Venus, Mercury are retrograde together for a time period, that adds like a heightened level of intensity. I mean, Venus goes retrograde every 18-ish months. Mercury goes retrograde about 3 times a calendar year. And Mars goes retrograde about every 2 years, so they don't always line up together. Venus and Mercury themselves line up the most. But if we had Mars, Venus, and Mercury retrograde at all at the same time, maybe the world would end at some point.
So around the 4th or 5th of August is when
Okay.
Mercury enters the shadow, because it's retrograding from 21 Virgo back to 8
Yeah.
Virgo. And so it passes 8 Virgo around August 4th. So yeah, it's gonna be a very wild, chaotic August, I think, is what we're
Yeah.
gonna be. But a lot of fun for people too,
I also,
potentially.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think with that Venus retrograde, there is that chance to redevelop a relationship with fun and
Mhm.
creativity. As long as you're not feeling pressured or overwhelmed to do it, if you let it come naturally.
I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love Venus. I mean, I love Leo and Virgo together, the energy. Like you could do if there's like if you've been wanting to like sew some new curtains or do something creative that could use some precision, like take up knitting or something like that is what I'm getting. This
hmm
could be a great time to do something something like that, creative that needs like detail work.
Yeah, yeah. I love that, because Virgo is all about the systems and the processes that are needed to make something successful. And Leo is kind of fun and creative and playful, where it's like, I'm just going to have fun with this. So there is that energy of like being able to focus, especially with Mars and Virgo, like hyper focus on some sort of niche product, niche like thing, topic. And then, with that Venus retrograde, maybe even coming back to a hobby that you used to really like and re-picking it up or like redeveloping your relationship with it, something like that. Um, not the best time to like go back to like old relationships because I feel like if you did that with that Mercury coming into its shadow, it's like old issues would need to be hashed out again. Like you wouldn't be gaining any ground. Um, so it might not be the best time for that, which it never is a good time for that.
Yeah, I don't. The exes are going to come flooding back. Oh my god!
Mm, yeah.
It's like I was on like a website, like a social media network, and an ex popped up because we were right at the cusp of Venus retrograde when we're recording this. So like
Mhm.
in my face, like what's he doing there? So that
Yeah.
was those sorts of things, but in the flesh maybe, or the DMs may be happening.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested to see what this means for the writers and the Screen Actors Guild strike, because
hmm
the actors are like Venus retrograde in Leo, and the writers Mercury going retrograde in Virgo. So that's going to be interesting to see what's going on with those two around this time.
Yeah, it seems like August itself, it's like new energy or topics are being reintroduced or being introduced, but we're also still dealing with things that have already happened. Like we're not continuing on to some sort of new thing. I also think of like with the fact that Pluto is back in Capricorn. It's like we're still having to deal with the same things that we've been dealing with since 2008. And we're not going to really be able to like completely move on and move forward until Pluto moves out of Capricorn, which is 2025, I think, is when the planet will be done with Capricorn and moved into Aquarius,
Yeah, after the next election.
which should be interesting because we got some interesting candidates this year or this coming election, I should say.
Interesting is one way to put it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and maybe this will be because a new moon, the sun, the leader, the moon, the people are together square Uranus. Maybe they will be able to negotiate a way out of the two strikes where I recommend people listen to Fran Drescher's. She's the head of the Screen Actors Guild speech about why the actors were going on strike. And she explained a lot of things about AI,
mm,
and with Pluto dancing between like late degree Capricorn, early degree Aquarius, and how AI is going to be taking over, like trying to just take people like a background actor did one scene and they want to own that forever and be able to use it however they want. Um, yeah, there's some like really, really big plutonic issues facing the collective and the need to push back on big businesses and governments around what they're trying to do to the masses of people with this technology.
Yeah, it's interesting too. So if you think of when Hollywood was like really um became a big thing or like a well-known name, it was back when Pluto was in Capricorn or moving through Capricorn. So we're in that opposition time period of kind of not necessarily destroying, but we're dealing with that access still. So it's like, how are we going to move? How are we going to move forward with what we've built? And there's this tension between like, is this still working? You know, because what Hollywood became very popular in the 20s, and Pluto was in Capricorn like 20s late. I think it was
Leo?
no, I didn't say Capricorn, Cancer. So I'm thinking
Yeah. Oh, Pluto and Cancer. Yeah.
Pluto and Cancer. So I'm thinking of that axis of like kind of that time period coming to an end or dealing with the issues that were created during that time period so that we can move into a new time period type of thing. So yeah, I think of that like early Hollywood, 1920s, 1930s, what was happening then, actors becoming actors and really developing film and things like that. So our next transit we have August 21st, we have that second Venus retrograde or second Venus square Jupiter. So this time Venus is retrograde. Jupiter's still in Taurus, not retrograde yet. So once again, what did I say? August, let me go back to my notes. August, where was it? August 9th. So we're kind of coming back into that August 9th time period where maybe something that came up around that time, the 21st, it kind of reemerges. Um, or yeah, wait, do I have that wrong? I feel like I do have
So the
that wrong.
first one was May 11th
May 11th, yep.
at 5 degrees, where both were direct. And the third one will be
The
on
21st.
September 2nd, 17th, September 17th.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was reading it wrong.
So this is the Venus square Jupiter.
Yes, I was looking at the Venus and Uranus. Thank you for correcting me. Um, so yeah, so what was already happening is brought back up. Venus and Jupiter together, I think of like maybe overdoing it a little bit, having too much fun, too much indulgence. Um, but it's also like uh it also can be like this tension between wanting to help other people and knowing when other people don't want their help type of thing. I think of Jupiter as, like I was saying, those those people that are here to help you in a positive way. And I think of Venus as well too as like those acquaintances that are here to help you as too. They're kind of like the helping planets in a simple sense.
Yeah, it's like parents like over caretaking their children and there being a problem from it.
Helicopter
Yeah,
parents. Yeah.
yeah,
You're
yes.
yeah, what
You,
are they?
you steal people's lessons when you try to constantly protect them from
Mm,
any kind of any kind of disappointments or adversity, and put your credit card away during this time. This is when somebody goes out and buys something they don't need, that's a luxury good that they
yeah.
can't afford, and then they're paying for it for like 5, 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. We have Jupiter in a Venus ruled sign. So there is things like luxury and what's appealing and pleasant and beautiful. And we have Venus in Leo, which is like very regal and like, I think of silks and velvets and just luxurious items. So
Yeah.
yeah, not a good time for credit card. Um, I would be interested to see what happens with the housing market around this time period. Um,
Oh, bubble bursting. Hopefully
yeah,
not.
something like that, or like interest rates spike, maybe. Maybe inflation goes up a little bit. It could be something around that. I would be curious to see what would happen or what had happened. I didn't do my research, but around that May 11th time period when the first one happened, when they were both direct.
Yeah.
So It's interesting. Jupiter in Taurus hasn't necessarily been the uh best thing for the economy because Jupiter just kind of tends to expand. And expansion can kind of be a negative thing as well. So, all right. So our next transit we have next day, um, Mars in Virgo opposed Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Um, Especially with Mercury slowing down in the sky, I think that this is going to feel like a kind of blah time period where there's like a lost, like there's no oomph in your step, or maybe you're going in too many directions at once and overdoing it a little bit. Mars opposed Neptune can feel really draining. Um, so
Low energy, maybe some kind of big storm. Yeah. Also, people willing to fight for their beliefs. So,
mm,
mm, I don't know. This is one of the things, the stories that came up was on the day that Mercury in Virgo was opposite Saturn and Pisces. The Pfizer plant in North Carolina was destroyed by a tornado. This feels
mm,
very stormy, and it's like it's a huge deal because it's going to impact the ability um, for people to get surgeries because anesthesia, like this plant makes like 20 something percent of sterile injectables or something like that for hospitals. So I don't know, maybe there'll be some big news as well about like rationing or like the inability for people to get some kind of, because Mars rules things like surgery
yeah.
in the side of health. Like there's just we hear about lack or the inability of something around that just came to me.
Yeah, and also too, it's like the sun is at the last degrees of Leo, so there's that level of intensity added to it. We have the moon in Scorpio, which is the place that it's furthest away from its exaltation sign of Taurus. So like the lens that we're seeing the world through on that day might not feel very bubbly and nice. Um, with the moon being in Scorpio, especially it's a Mars ruled sign, so like the moon is looking to Mars as to what's going on. So yeah, it could feel confusing, or like just like I get this like unfamiliar grounds, or like what is going on, or like needing to get to the bottom of something that's unclear, or like you were saying, fighting for some sort of belief or ideal image of like what you see the world as, type of thing. Um,
Yeah. Also,
yeah,
landslide just came to me.
landslide.
Yeah, like in
Yeah.
California, there are these houses that are just like crumbled off a hill.
Oh yeah. So I grew up on Cape Cod, and so along the Atlantic coast, there's a lot of dune shacks, and every year it's like the dune loses 3 feet of, if not more than, of coastline. So it's like these houses are falling into the ocean, literally. Um,
Mm.
so that, yeah, that's, and thinking that it's also like, I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but that's a very literal thing. It's the moon, the home is in fall in Scorpio. So things falling into water, you know. So that's an interesting point. I could see some sort of, it could feel like that, like your home is falling apart or crumbling or something, or your view on the world is crumbling, or it could be a literal manifestation. So our next transit we have the next day. So it seems like the end of August is kind of packed with transit after transit, or the next, I shouldn't say transit, but the next event is Venus around this time period, the 23rd, reemerges as a morning star. So, like you were saying before, when Venus is morning star, she takes on a much more direct, or like in your face, or like a, yeah, direct way of communication. So, this is like the final stages of the retrograde where she's like, okay, I've done my conjunction. With the sun, I'm going to start moving back, or I'm going to keep moving back, but I'm going to get further away from the sun. So finally I can kind of station. So I'm interested to see how this works out as Venus in Leo as a morning star. It seems very direct, and it's not necessarily loud, but it just seems like there's something that needs to be said, that you're not willing to keep hidden or keep to yourself anymore. So possibly some sort of development with like you were saying, the actor strike around this time period, something emerges around that, in that in that uh in that scheme of things. On the 23rd as well, too, we have the sun moving into Virgo, as it typically does around this time period. Sun is in Virgo until September 22nd to September 23rd, depending on your time zone. Yeah, so the sun is now looking to Mercury, and what's going to be happening with Mercury relatively soon? Mercury stations retrograde. So what is that? How would you explain that to someone in a mundane sense of like, okay, the sun moves into Virgo and Mercury then stations retrograde?
Well, it's really interesting because the sun is in mundane astrology, the leader, or also it's related to like celebrity and things like that. And yeah, it's really interesting. I think there's going to be something where a world leader is going to be stepping down or passing on, because when you looked at the Aries ingress, Mercury, which was ruling the chart, was like in the eighth house. There was something about like a leader loss of leadership or loss of a leader. So yeah, there's going to be some instability around the authority around this time.
Yeah, because for the mundane chart, so if you don't know what we're talking about, we look at a chart for the moment the sun ingresses into Aries. It was a Virgo rising, wasn't it correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so if I did a presentation on it for my Patreon, but that was I don't know, months ago, so I don't fully remember, but I remember saying that Mercury is going to be important this year because it's the chart ruler. So that being said, August 23rd, that same day as the sun ingresses, August 23rd, August 24th, depending on time zones, Mercury stations retrograde until September 15th. So the sun ingressing into Virgo seems like it's something that we need to pay attention to. It
And Virgo rules health.
Yeah.
So this again could be the story around medications not being available, and Mercury rules commerce and transportation. So like the Teamsters are going on strike, and yeah, it could be like order whatever you need for the next several months now, because there could be a lot of delays, retrogrades delay, yeah, getting through transportation and commerce and all of this kind of stuff, because it's just not available because it's been destroyed or because everything's slowed down.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too. So Virgo, if we look at it in an archetypal sense, it's being prepared. It's the archetypal time of year where we're preparing for winter. It's the end of summer, but we're transitioning into fall. So you might notice, like, especially with that Mars, Mercury and Mars were conjunct relatively recently, before the 23rd. So Mars is still, it's within 6 degrees of Mercury when it's stationed. So there's that sense of like hyper focus or like vigilance when it comes to being prepared. Um, you know, Mercury stations and is opposing Neptune. So there's that maybe fear of the unknown and wanting to prepare for every situation, or being able to take care of what you need to take care of. So yeah, and the moon is still in Scorpio this time period. Once again, it's not the most comfortable place for the moon. So there's that feeling of like, it feels very doomsday preppery to me, with Mercury trine Uranus very closely during the station. It feels like, okay, I'm going to prepare for some sort of apocalypse. You know, it might be all hype, but there's that energy in the air to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the double retrograde runs from around August 24th through September 3rd. So
Yeah.
that's a time like it's gonna be a little chaotic. I have to go to a wedding that time period, so that's gonna
Oh
be interesting.
gosh. Yeah.
I know. I'm like,
Give
oh
yourself extra time, pack an extra dress in case your zipper breaks, like pack all of the extra things. That's one of those time periods where it's like if you're traveling during a Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde, it's like you literally pack 20 pairs of underwear for 5 days just in case, you know? Yeah. So yeah, the 23rd seems like it seems like one of the more important days of 2023 because so much is happening. We have the sun ingressing into Virgo, we have Venus reemerging, we have Mercury stationing direct, which is we were talking about that how Mercury is the chart ruler for the mundane chart of 2023. So um it should be an interesting time period, you know.
yeah.
So our next transit, as we move through August, is on August 27th. We have the Sun opposed Saturn. Um, so that is like the halfway point of the Saturn retrograde, give or take. So take what you want from that. The Sun opposes Saturn every year. This one's a little bit different because the past like 5-ish years we've had the Sun opposed Saturn and Saturn ruled signs. So this is a new flavor, you know?
Yeah, it won't be as maybe as bracing or shocking. We'll see. Um, in
Yeah.
Virgo and Pisces.
Yeah, because before we had Saturn and Aquarius, so both planets were in domicile. So there was this like big tension, and now both planets don't have dignity necessarily. So there's maybe a little bit of temperance to this Sun opposed Saturn. But the Sun opposed Saturn is like, I think of like what's your plan for the long run? It's like, what do you want to get out of life and what are you willing to do to get out of it? Putting in the work with not a lot of reward type of thing, or like coming up with a 5-year plan, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there may be a spotlight on like this crisis that of faith that people are going through.
Mm,
Like what's coming to me is all of the like with all of the social media and especially like young girls being in a state of depression and
mm,
it's like yeah, something about that. Maybe TikTok. Maybe this will be when the government finally put some limitations on TikTok or
mm.
something like that. I don't know. That just came to me because Saturn and Pisces, like this hardship and this depression and this crisis coming from Pisces, all of this like illusion on social media that's not reality, but it's having a serious impact on people's like physical health,
Yeah.
Virgo, and mental health, Pisces.
Yeah, I've been seeing that too, just in myself. It's like social media, like, yes, it's great and it can be fun, but it's so depressing because every other post or video is like you're doing it wrong, like look at me, I'm doing it better than you. Like it's a internet version of keeping up with the Joneses, I
Mhm.
want a better house, I want a better fence, I want a better yard, stuff like that. It causes a lot of jealousy and it causes a lot of like feelings of like, oh, woe is me, I'm not doing as good. So I like that analogy, with the sun in a mercurial ruled sign, which is like technology and stuff like that, and communication, which is social media. um I think that's a great perspective on it. So on that same day, on the 27th, we also have Uranus stationing retrograde until about the December 5th time period. I don't really pay attention to the outer planets retrogrades. it's neither here nor there. What you really realistically need to know about an outer planet stationing retrograde is it's not going to really be moving from the degree it stations for a very long time. I didn't write down when Uranus would actually move out of the 15 degree of Taurus, or excuse me, the 23 degree of Taurus, but you just need to know that it's going to be there for a while. So if you have personal planets there in your natal chart, Uranus is going to kind of be hovering over it.
Yeah. And Uranus can be like, well, it depends on what it's doing in your chart, but the Magi astrologers consider it a benefic. So it potentially could be something positive. I'm just noticing it's going to be trying my Pluto in the third. So
Ooh, that's
yes,
exciting.
the 11th house. But yeah, 5 days before, 5 days after, there would probably be some mundane events. But yeah, I don't either get too jazzed up about the outer planet retrogrades.
Yeah. And like you were kind of saying that it could be like weather related. That's kind of what I've noticed with like especially Uranus and Jupiter together in Taurus. It seems like there's some weird freak weather accidents that are more in my line of view than what I remember before.
Mhm.
So that's just something to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So on the 29th, um, around this time period, like I've kind of been saying, is Mercury begins to disappear as an evening star and will get ready to reemerge as a morning star. So this is the period where Mercury is full on retrograde, moving back towards the sun as the sun moves towards Mercury. So I feel like that, something to be aware of. If you're like worshiping or working with Mercury, it's not going to be visible in the sky, so it might not be as prominent to deliver some sort of message. Oh, I forgot one. Let's go back a day. Sorry.
That's
Um,
all
I'm just rushing ahead. We have on August 28th, before Mercury disappears, we have Mars into Libra until October 11th. So, what does that mean? Um, Mars isn't comfortable here. It's furthest away from his own sign of Aries. Uh, you know, I think of like, I think of it's because Mars wants action and aggression and kind of conflict to resolve some sort of issue. And Libra's all about like beauty and peace and harmony. But there's an interesting dynamic because we have the ruler of where Mars is exalted, Capricorn, which is Saturn, is the ruler, is exalted in Libra. So there's this weird dynamic between the two where it's like there's something there if you're willing to like work through the discomfort, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And with the being co-present with the South Node in Libra, there's going to be it's going to be an interesting transit.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this day. I wonder what's going to come up because Mars is on 0 Libra is a world point, and Jupiter on 15 Taurus is a world point, and I believe they're sesqui-square each other. I think I could be wrong.
I don't know.
I think they're in like a hard aspect.
Yeah.
Apologies if I'm wrong, but when I see those two planets on world points, both in Venus ruled signs, something's and Venus is retrograde almost to its stationing point of 12 degrees, 12 degrees of Leo.
Yeah,
Be
so
interested to see what happens.
Venus is really slowing down to
Hmm.
stop. So that's an interesting perspective. She's also square that Jupiter in Taurus at 15.
Yeah.
She's separating from it. But yeah, it's interesting to think of you know, after having that intense sun ingress with the Mercury station and then the Mars ingress moving to be co-present with the South Node. I could see people overdoing it because the South Node to me I see as this like purging or eliminating. So maybe
Yeah.
you're too gung-ho and it's very draining. Especially with that Sun Saturn opposition that had just perfected. Maybe like being too hard on yourself or overdoing something um in that sense. And the Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
So yeah, luckily Mars is moving fast, so it seems like a long time period for Mars to be in Libra, but Mars is moving at a good clip right now, so it's not as long as like if Mars was retrograde like we had in
Yeah,
Gemini, which was
never
forever.
ending. Ah, I have Mars and Gemini natally. Oh,
Oh gosh.
that was something.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a long transit. I have my sun and my Mars in Virgo, so it was like just squaring that aspect for me. It was hard. But yeah, it was draining. But I like Mars in Libra with like quick quick ways of connecting with other people, or like I think of that air quality of being able to talk or like connect with people through exchanging words. So I think of like, it's not necessarily quick wit, but I think that there's opportunity there to you know, maybe form a different way of communication or a different way of relating with people that you're maybe not comfortable with or familiar with. Maybe experimenting with it a little bit with that Mercury retrograde in Virgo, something along those lines, you know?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So our last transit for the month, oopsie, I forgot that I went back another day. Our next transit for the month is August 30th. We have that third lunation. So it's a full moon in Pisces. Hey, conjunct Saturn in Pisces as well too. So that's yeah, that should be a an interesting lunation.
Yeah,
Um
moon conjunct Saturn is uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah.
People
Or
are uncomfortable. I don't know if they're drenched or something, but
mhm.
they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, and still with that Venus energy retrograde, she's slowing down. So there's this sense of like, not moving forward or not moving backwards as fast as she typically would. So there's that, I think of like not moving and being really uncomfortable. Saturn moon is like it's hard, it's coming up with some sort of block or like restriction, or maybe there's difficult conversations that you have to deal with that are not they cause physical discomfort, something like that. um the full moon is getting things out and showing some sort of result, but with the Mercury retrograde, it's like maybe the results you need to put in the work with that Saturn energy, and the results aren't going to be immediately shown yet.
Yeah.
I also meant to check too. I believe that this is uh the first lunation for the Pisces Virgo axis that we have, that has Saturn has been directly involved in as far as connecting by degree. So I wonder about maybe getting some sort of like understanding of what Saturn and Pisces is going to kind of be like, seeing some sort of results. Saturn moved into Pisces, was it March 12th? No,
Seventh.
March
Well,
7th.
yeah, March 7th.
Yeah. So it was just the tail end of Pisces season. So we haven't really had like a full Pisces Virgo axis being highlighted yet
Mhm.
with Saturn and Pisces. So interesting to think of.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting time. Yeah, it seems like I wouldn't plan the party of the century on this day. People are gonna be bored.
Yeah.
Potentially. And yeah, something's not gonna go easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And
This
still
is a
like,
good day to stay in and watch a movie.
yeah, exactly. With that, we still have Venus square Jupiter. So, like we were saying, overdoing it, indulging too much, which could cause a lot of physical discomfort with the moon being the body. Or maybe you just find yourself being like very down in the dumps around
Yeah.
around this time period. Maybe you're over analyzing things, or like I was saying, those difficult situations or conversations that you kind of need to deal with are just bumming you out. I like to say, you're harshing my mellow. Like I feel like this is a
Yes.
very you're harshing my mellow full moon.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what we have for August. Are there any last words that you want to say about August or any specific transits in August, and kind of how to work with the energy or insights?
Well, my big thing about this summer is being prepared for unexpected things. So, if you have trips planned, I would recommend making sure you have travel insurance because there's going to be a lot of flight cancellations due to weather or other things, maybe strikes or things like that. So, that's one of the biggest things. And like, if you've been thinking about getting a generator, get it. If you, yeah, like think about having bottled water at home or in your car, things like. I think there's a lot of practical things we can do to be prepared for unexpected heat problems or storms. Yeah, pay attention to the weather, but also have fun without spending a lot of money. Don't buy it. Don't buy that Fendi bag or whatever that you just keep feeling this internal pull to purchase. Yeah, but like there could be, think about staying present and having fun with like the simple things in life, just like, and having gratitude for all of your blessings is my recommendation for this this summer.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think of just having those little tiny moments throughout your day that bring you joy, even if it's something as simple as like a cold glass of water. That's a very
Yes.
like Jupiter and Taurus thing. It's like the simple pleasures. That's, in Venus retrograde, it's like redeveloping a relationship with the simple pleasures. Um, but yeah, I think that that's great advice. Like with the Mercury retrograde, with the Venus retrograde, it's like travel insurance, be prepared for like things or delays. And also too, like put your credit card away. Like we were saying, enjoy the simple pleasures. Like go smell the flowers in the field. You don't have to buy flowers, you know?
Yeah. And I love the cold glass of water. I was thinking hot coffee when you said that.
Hot
So
coffee.
yeah.
Well, whatever you want. I mean,
Whatever your jam is.
yeah.
Yeah, but I love the cold glass of water. Be thankful you have clean, cold water.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that that's a great message for like the the heat of summer where like tensions are high, people are grumpy because they're uncomfortable. It's like remember the simple pleasures and remember all the abundance that you have in your life, you know?
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Beautiful.
so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was so fun.
I know.
I loved it. I love your insights.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
thank you.
really great.
So if anyone wants to check out Celeste's work, I have all of her links in the show notes, website, Instagram, YouTube, any other platform that she's on. So go over there, check her out, give her a follow, say hi. And once again, everyone, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you all have a wonderful August. Bye.